Okay, we are live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to GSuite Accessibility Tools for Reading. My name is Rhiannon Gutierrez, and I'm the Director of Digital Learning for BPS Technology. And joining me is a close colleague of mine, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Scott Richards. I'm an occupational therapist for Boston Public Schools, and I work on the assistive technology team. Glad you guys are here to join us today.
So this is a partnership that Scott and I have had over the years in talking about these various accessibility tools. So we'll be tag teaming during this webinar. But first things first, know that this webinar is being recorded. It might feel like you're drinking from a fire hose and learning about some of these applications. We're going to do the best we can to keep it slow. Also, make sure that you fill out the form. I'm going to post the link in the chat to note your attendance, and so we can give you the link to the slide deck and the webinar recording at the end. It looks like everybody in the room is using their names, so we'll be able to identify you. So thank you for that. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. You will see the chat in the lower middle of your screen. In fact, you should see something bleeping because I'm sending you the link to the form right now. All right. So please fill this out either now or towards the end. I will remind you by sharing it again.
So our agenda today is to discuss what we're reading, how we're reading, what makes a reading experience accessible. We're going to run through some different types of digital text that you encounter, and then review the Chrome extensions for accessibility for reading.
So some examples of the things we might be reading, I was actually thinking about this a little bit, can be anything from signs in our environment to websites to books that are in print or online, various print media, social media, emails, assignments that are both online and print, as well as captions on television or subtitles. So all these are different examples that we might be reading from in our environment and day-to-day lives. And I'm sure there's also many more you can think of. So we're trying to make recommendations that are largely in the digital space, the different types of things we might be reading.
So accessibility can come in many different forms depending on the person who's consuming the text. We highlighted some of the main accessibility features that make text accessible, including text-to-speech, highlights, dictionary, also picture dictionary, which is a feature of the Read and Write for Google toolbar, translation, screen masking, which is essentially like taking a note card and covering a couple lines of text and moving it down, but this is a digital version of that. Word search and changing the font and size and color to suit the needs or visual preferences for the user. And simplified text is kind of a cognitive strategy for making something more accessible.
And there's probably some other examples, but these are the ones we tend to find across all these various platforms that will allow you to customize your reading experience and make it more accessible for you. Some tools we would like to share with you right off the bat. These actually have nothing to do with Chrome or Google at all, but they are some digital text options that the Boston Public Schools has available through Clever. If you don't see them now, you will see them by next week. So some of the ones that we want to highlight are Bookshare, which is a library of thousands of texts that you can download either in an EPUB, which is like an ebook format, Microsoft Word doc, an audio file, a DAISY format, and also a Braille reader file. So typically Bookshare tends to be used by students with print disabilities. We can also use it to adapt books. Learning Ally is a tool that is typically used for students who also have print or reading disabilities. And so both of those tools, Bookshare and Learning Ally, will require you to have some kind of disability or reading deficit of the sort. And Learning Ally provides exclusively audiobooks that are human read. And Tar Heel Reader is a type of resource that provides digital books that are really for beginning readers and also possibly for English learners. So that's something you might find, more simplified text. It's very homemade, and you can even get some inspiration from that as well if you wanted to create your own books that are similar to Tar Heel Readers books. And then there's some others that we might be a little bit more familiar with that are not specific to certain populations. And those are Tumble Books, which has a library of interactive books, as well as Sora by Overdrive, which gives you access to the Boston Public Library catalog of books. It's great because you don't actually need to have a library card to access it. You just need to go to Clever, click on the Sora icon that you see there. This is the little excited airplane, and you can access that Boston Public Library catalog. We also have a webinar available on that you can watch in your own time. And finally, there's Common Lit. Common Lit offers a variety of different kinds of texts that you can read online. And all of these are either currently available in Clever or they will be available soon. But keep in mind that they are geared towards certain populations, so not all of them may be appropriate for all of your students. I'm going to go over a few things with Scott today. We did say that we are going to talk about GSuite accessibility extensions and accessibility settings. So one of the first things you should consider is that anytime you are using a browser, whether it is Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, there's going to be customizations for your reading experience, for your students' reading experience. In particular, we're going to talk about the customizations would look like for Chrome. So if you were to copy this text right here and paste it in your address bar, then it would actually take you to the appearance settings. Similarly, the Chrome settings accessibility will take you to your accessibility settings. I'm going to post both of those in the chat so that you can access them. All right, if you want to do customization while this is happening, then that's fine too. So Chrome settings appearance and Chrome settings accessibility. Those are both things that you would want to check out to customize your browsing experience. And this is not just for students, it's also for us as teachers. And I say this because we might be straining our eyes and we want to have an easier experience of reading, customizing how the layout looks. So for example, underneath appearance, I can adjust the fonts, sides, and page zoom. I'm going to take us there briefly so we can see what that looks like. Okay. There we go. Chrome settings appearance. Now it will open up these options here. You notice it says font size medium recommended. Let's say you want to see it bigger, so you can change it to large or very large. Right now, that's a bit much for me, so I'm going to go back to medium. But if you wanted to have it there, you could. And this is making it so you don't have to zoom in each time. It's already going to be large for you or for your students. You can also customize the fonts. If you wanted to look a little different, you can do that. Typically, it'll ask you what the sizing looks like and the minimum, as well as some other standard fonts. So you can play with those as well. I think Google's font is pretty readable, so you probably don't have to do a lot, but just in case you wanted to. And the page zoom, that also gives you the different options to really like zoom in on the page or not. And that's really big. It might be good for demonstration purposes, but probably not for all the time. And 100% is the default. This is how it's supposed to be most of the time. Now that's the appearance. Those are the three things you can adjust rather easily. Now I'm going to go into the settings to show you what the settings would look like. Oh, sorry, it's not settings, it's accessibility, my bad. Let me fix that. Let's go back here and copy this. There we go. All right. Chrome settings accessibility. And it'll have a couple of different options here, including captions and adding accessibility features. And the add accessibility features is going to take us into my next point around finding those Chrome extensions that will help make your browsing experience more accessible. So these are some that they developed or recommend, including color enhancers to change how the colors look, contrast to really distinguish between the light and the dark colors, because some websites are very light. I think that's a design aesthetic that a lot of people are choosing to make everything lighter, which is really making it harder for some folks to read. And then there's some others that have to do with more like keyboards and reading if you are blind or visually impaired. So these are just some that they're offering here, but there's certainly a lot more. Now, I just want to reiterate that Chrome accessibility extensions and everything that we're talking about here is unique to the user using the Chrome browser. So what you might set on your computer is not what's going to be on your student's computer. So this is where you would come in and you would actually guide your students in saying, okay, I noticed that you're having some difficulty with these things. I'm going to make these recommendations for you to make your reading experience more accessible. And as we said, reading is not just about reading books, it's also about reading websites. It's about reading other kinds of materials that we might encounter digitally. So the settings you can play with are, once again, going back to what Scott was talking about with the fonts, the colors, the contrast. So with that being said, there's two other extensions that I want to recommend that will make your reading experience easier, and that is extensions that reduce browser clutter. We're probably going to websites and trying to read news articles, or we're going to websites and we're just trying to read something that they're talking about. It could be a Time website, it could be a Time for Kids, it could be National Geographic, Smithsonian, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of these websites may have ads on them, and that can be extremely distracting for yourself or for your students. So there's a couple of things that can help you reduce those distractions. One of the first ones is called Mercury Reader. And Mercury Reader clears away the clutter and shows a simplified reader view, so you just get your text and you don't have all this extra stuff around it. Now the page has to be accessible in order for this to work. We can do a quick live demo of what that looks like. So I have installed Mercury Reader as a Chrome extension. I'm going to show you where you can find Chrome extensions. Generally, you will see them near the top right of the screen. You're going to see some icons here that I'm hovering over that look like little things. And then if I click on my three dots, there's a whole bunch of icons there as well. All of those are what we call Chrome extensions. They enhance the functionality of my browser. Some of them have to do with reading, some of them has to do with ad clutter, others have to do with some other things like meditation and relaxing and so on. But for our purposes today, I'm going to talk specifically about this particular icon, Mercury Reader. So I have to locate it here in the icons. It's actually not orange, but it still is that little rocket. But first, let's go to a website and just test it out, okay? Let's do Time for Kids. That's a popular one that I tend to reference a lot. Go there. And we can pick an article. Let me just change. Oops. Let's go here. Okay. So we have it listed here, and it's pretty simplified already. But let's say we want to simplify it further. We can definitely click on that Mercury Reader extension and have it change out the format of the page for us. Let's do that. There we go. Okay, and now it really reduces all the colors and the ad clutter by just giving us the text. There we go. Now it's talking specifically about because it pointed up the clickers and get the typography. So Mercury Reader can be really helpful in that regard. It will reduce that clutter for you. It is called Ad Block Plus. Hi everyone, I'm back. I got temporarily booted. Sorry for that. I hope that this is the only time it will happen. My goodness. All right, let's get back on. Thanks for your patience. All right. So Mercury Reader reduces the ad clutter and allows you to just see things in a simplified view. You can have the black text on white, or you can have white text on black. The other extension that would be helpful for you is called AdBlock Plus. And this is a really easy one to use because really what it does is if you're on news websites where you might see a lot of advertisements, it really reduces the amount of advertisements you see. It also sometimes works with reducing advertisements in videos, depending on where you're watching the video. So this particular icon is just like this stop sign that says ABP. So that's something that you would click on and it would show you pretty much whether it's blocking ads on their website or not. So we don't actually have ads here. So obviously, it's not really doing the work as much. But this is really super helpful. I cannot tell you how much ads distract me and make it really hard for me to read. So having this there as a teacher, I think is like a game changer. I highly recommend checking that out. All right, so those are two easy Chrome extensions you can check out. I'll pass it on to Scott to talk about one of our favorites.
Thanks, Ree. I think most of you are familiar with Read and Write for Google. If you're not, it is this little mysterious purple puzzle piece that you see up in the top right-hand corner of your screen in the extensions, as Rhiannon was pointing out earlier. If you don't have a copy, or not a copy, if you don't have the extension yet in your browser, we provided a link in here for you to install it. I understood from several people, including myself, that at one point my Read and Write extension was no longer visible up there. So I had to go to basically exactly where this link takes you and download it again. And there are other components of the Read and Write for Google toolbar, which are technically separate extensions, but they all sort of work in a fairly seamless fashion with Read and Write for Google, and we'll get to those shortly. I also put a link here for the TextHelp YouTube channel. TextHelp is the company that makes Read and Write for Google, and they have an awesome website. It looks like this, their YouTube channel, and these are a bunch of short clips of, some of them are short, and there are a couple that are a little bit longer. This one here is more of an overview of the entire product, but they have lots of short videos for each of the different tools that you find in the toolbar. And then it talks about some additional things, which we'll go over briefly, not in too much detail, since we don't have time for that today. But there are several other useful things in there, such as the EPUB reader and Snapverter, which we'll give you a little overview of. So I wanted to give you a brief look at what it looks like, what the Read and Write toolbar looks like in its different formats. We'll start with just a website. I opened up Wikipedia because it's a common sort of generic website. And I'll say, just as sort of a warning, not every website is accessible with the Google Chrome toolbar. So if you encounter a website, or the student does, and they want to open it up and use the features, but when they click on the puzzle piece, you're not seeing the toolbar, first I would recommend using the reload button, because often that tends to fix internet issues, so to speak. And if it's still not showing up, there's a chance that the page itself is not accessible with the toolbar. But in general, it works on most pages. So this is what the toolbar looks like once you pull it up. And you can move it around here by dragging it on this little compass here. And you'll see most of the features that you'll find in documents and especially on PDF Reader, you'll see most of the features are here, and they're the reading features. None of the writing features are in here. Actually, they do have prediction in here, but it's not really useful here. So the reading tools are the ones that are most useful, which is like the hover speech. You hover over the text, and then it starts to read aloud for you. I can show you that really quick. Could everyone hear that? And then there's dictionaries here. If there's an unfamiliar word to you, you can use the regular dictionary. It gives a couple of definitions. You can press play. There's also the picture dictionary, which is a nice little novel thing that students like to use. And the cool thing about that is you can actually use the, you can click and drag these images into a document. So it can be kind of a fun way of expressing oneself to accompany their text. All right, so the rest of the tools, the screen reader, or sorry, the screen mask was something else I wanted to show you. This was the thing I was talking about that's like the note card trick that we often used for visual scanning for students. And you can change sort of the appearance of this by going into the toolbar right there. And you can make the background lighter or darker and change the height of this. And you can make this, I wouldn't recommend making it any lighter. And then the screenshot reader, I'll go over that shortly. And then these are highlighting features. They're very useful if you're highlighting, if you want to get key details out of a text. Let's say you wanted like the main ideas, the main characters, the climax of a story, then you could use the highlighters to highlight. You could color code them to different subjects. And then after you've highlighted them with different colors, then you click on the collect highlights. And what it does is open up a separate document, and it organizes the text according to the color of the highlighter that you used. So it's a very nice feature. There's also a simplified page, which is nice. It does something similar to what Mercury Reader does. Rhiannon was just letting me know that you guys maybe couldn't see what I was doing. It's probably the way that I'm sharing. Let me see. I think this was what I was showing you guys before that you couldn't see. Okay, you should be able to see, you can see this screen, I'm sure.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay. So the simplified page, it'll do something similar to what Mercury Reader does. And again, it doesn't work on every page, but it does do a nice sort of cleanup of all of the extraneous information on the sides and the advertisements. So then you get just this, just the text itself, and you can simplify it, which is kind of it's kind of a way of scaffolding the text down to a simpler level. It's not an exact science, but it does do a pretty decent job of kind of cutting out the bulk of the text, and it works better. It works better on some pages than others. Like in this case, it didn't seem to do a whole lot for us, but it did simplify it. So that's a good tool to use, at least to try out if a student's having a really hard time understanding the text. And then I'll go ahead and show you now what an EPUB would look like. If you're not familiar with an EPUB is an electronic publication. Digital books often come in an EPUB format, and they're quite accessible. They're a nice file type. I prefer them over PDFs, because PDFs can range from not accessible at all to quite accessible, but EPUBs in general are very accessible. So the way that you open up an EPUB file in Read&Write for Google is that you'd find the file somewhere in your Google Drive, and I just put in EPUB so that I could find the files quickly. And then you'd right click on it, and then you just open it with Read&Write for Google Chrome. And this is what I ended up with. So now it's open, and you can see the Read&Write toolbar up here, and a lot of the same features for reading, like the dictionary, picture dictionary, and then the play, pause, and stop.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
We don't see the screen either, so you have to update it. Ah, there we go now. It's
You got it
Thank
now?
you. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So when you open up the EPUB, this is how it would look. And you'll see a lot of the same reading tools up here at the top, including the hover speech. Sorry, I lost my mouse connection. We're having some technical difficulties today. The other tools up here, like the screen mask, as I showed you before, this is quite useful when you're reading in an EPUB. You can zoom in and out of the text depending on what kind of, let's see if I can find mine here. No, I can't find it here, but it's a built-in feature on your Mac, and also the Chrome accessibility features, which would be more useful for the students as they'll mostly be on Chromebooks. The highlighters are here, so you can collect either vocabulary. That was another one that I didn't mention here. So instead of just collecting 3 different subjects and having it open up in a separate file, you could have it create a vocabulary list, which is a really awesome feature. I find that a lot of teachers really enjoy this, and students do. So if I just highlight a few words here, it doesn't matter which color I use for the vocabulary list. Click on vocabulary. And then it just automatically opens up a new document with the vocabulary list. And the cool thing is it gives you the definition, the symbol, and then I like how it leaves a little space here for notes. And sometimes teachers will say, make your own sentence or describe it in your own words. So I really, I think it's such a powerful tool. And it's kind of one of those activities in class that is a little bit of like an old school activity that could be very time consuming, but if you use this vocabulary list, then you can focus on sort of more important aspects of the lesson, like them interpreting it and using it in their own language, and creating their own sentences with it. Okay, so I think that kind of covers what it looks like in an EPUB. I'll show you what a PDF would look like. The same way that I opened up the EPUB, I just found a PDF somewhere in my drive, you'll be saving your files on your drive. That's the way that you have to pretty much access these tools, because you have to be connected to Google Chrome. And then you just right click and open with Read and Write for Google. And then you'll end up with, let me move this down. Your PDF would look something like this. And then your toolbar, you can see that it looks a bit different than in an EPUB and a document, which I'll show you momentarily, and websites. It's more limited in terms of the options that it offers you than in a document or a website, but there still are some useful tools, like the click to speak is basically the hover speech, except you click on it instead of hovering. Still has the dictionaries, the play, pause, stop. So if I wanted to highlight the text and play it, I could do that. The screenshot reader, I guess I might as well show you that now. The screenshot reader is a way of sort of highlighting a certain area of text that you want it to read aloud. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. It's not quite as useful on something like a PDF like this, unless there are other images and things on the page that are distracting, and you don't want it to just read aloud to you saying image, image. If you just want to highlight the text that you find on the page, it's a good way of just capturing that text. But the important thing about the screenshot reader is that you don't capture only some of the text. You have to completely cover it, because if you don't, something like this will happen. It has no idea what I was doing, because you have to capture the entire text when you do that. So you can't cut anything off. And then there's this could be useful for note taking, but you can do a typewriter feature, which is basically like an annotation, and just like type right over the top. And then you can use this like little compass thing to move it around. And then when you click on check, it just shows the text itself. You can change the font. You could also use talk and type, which is speech to text. I'm not sure if it'll work while we're doing this demo here. Oh, looks like it is. You could also use the word prediction, and the TextHelp word prediction is the it tries to predict even before you start typing. I know that some other tools like Don Johnson Snap and Read, they don't try to predict from the beginning, but Read and Write does that. So the cool thing about it is that you can hover over the words, because often the word prediction is a useful tool for students who have spelling difficulties or decoding difficulties, and it gives them a way of listening to a word that looks like that could be the correct spelling to know if it is or not. It gives them some feedback. I also find sometimes it's not as useful as you might think, because some students start to depend on it to feed them words. So instead of typing, they're just clicking on words as they go along. So it's one of those things you have to kind of experiment with to see if it's useful or not, and then give a little bit of instruction to the student that they need to type. They need to at least put the beginning sounds of their words in there instead of just clicking on words as they show up. There's some drawing tools on here too that you can use, and the push pin is a way of sort of making a note somewhere on the document. So it puts a pin here, and that way when you click on the pin later, you'll be able to see the note that you put. So there's some kind of cool features in the PDF reader. And for some of the PDFs, like this PDF is a very friendly PDF, so you could easily have this text read back to you. But I'm sure some, if not all of you, have encountered certain PDFs that don't have accessible text, in which case you'd have to use something else called SnapVerter. And SnapVerter uses a technology called object character recognition, or OCR. So it will extract inaccessible text from an image and sort of interpret it or translate it into an accessible text. I think Rhiannon's going to give us a quick demo of that. And let's see, I wanted to go back to what a document would look like. So Read and Write for Google, I love it, especially in documents in Google Docs or in any Google formatted file. They're the most accessible that you can provide for students, because it gives them multiple means of representation and expression, and all of the tools that are available for Read and Write for Google are available in the Google Docs. I think there's a few that I might be missing here, because there's a place where you can customize your toolbar where the 3 dots are. Click on options, and then it goes through all of the different options that you have to customize it. And there's one box here called features, and this is where you would click on whether or not you want them to show up in your toolbar. Looks like I have all of them currently checked. Sometimes I take some out because I find them to be less useful than others. I think I've showed you the talk and type. My recommendation for talk and type is to just do 1 sentence at a time. So instead of just opening this up and starting to speak into it like I'm speaking to you right now, the technology is not smart enough to be able to interpret my ums and ahs and know when the end of my sentences are. So the best thing to do is do 1 sentence at a time. You get the sentence in your mind, hold on to it, and then click on the record button, say the 1 sentence, click on the period, turn off the microphone, and edit the sentence. I hope that makes sense. Basically, it's come up with the idea, say it, check it, edit it, then start over again. There's a translator. It basically works like Google Translate. There's nothing that's that magical about this. So you could use just Google Translate if you wanted to, because it won't do an entire section of text. It's just basically single words. And one of my favorite things on Google Docs, or on Google Docs with Read and Write, is this thing called Voice Note. So basically, if I wanted to put a voice note here, it could be as me as a student doing a voice note, or looking at a student's document as a teacher and leaving the student a note. I don't know what it's doing now. I think I just messed it up. Okay. So if I wanted to put a voice note here, I have to get my toolbar back now. See, it disappeared on me. There it comes. So if I want to leave a voice note right there, I could click on record and start recording a note here that I want the student to listen to later and respond to. And then after I'm done recording, I can insert and then replay it. And so the student could reply with text here, or the student could also add in their own note, doing the exact same thing that I just did. Don't worry if you don't remember how to use all these tools. Like I said, on that Read and Write for Google Chrome TextHelp site, they have videos of basically every single tool within that toolbar that I showed you. All right, the Screenshot Reader and TextHelp Reader, they're a part of the Read and Write for Google suite, but technically on the back end of things, the way that you have to download them, technically they are separate extensions. So if you don't have the Screenshot Reader or the PDF Reader already, you'll know when you try to open one of those files, it will prompt you to download something, I believe. And if it does not, then we have links here for the Screenshot Reader to download it, and the same for the PDF Reader. And then I'll go ahead and turn this over to Rhiannon so she can give you a quick overview of what Snapfurter can do for you.
Thanks, Scott. That was a great overview of Read and Write. Similar to Read and Write in that universe is Snapfurter, also created by TextHelp, who created Read and Write. So the whole point of us even bringing up Snapfurter is that we might be dealing with inaccessible text or inaccessible PDFs. And what we can do with Snapfurter is basically take that particular print document or something that's been scanned. We're all probably familiar with PDFs that kind of look a little crooked. So this helps you make those accessible so you can actually annotate and do all the things with them that Read and Write affords you to do. So rather than going through all the steps of the installation of Snapfurter, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I posted a link in the chat to the Snapfurter trial. Basically, once you install Snapfurter, then you will get this folder in your Google Drive that has subfolders in it. I'm going to show you what that looks like. So in my Google Drive folder, you can see the breadcrumbs right here. There's my drive and then Snapfurter. That is a folder that was installed when I installed the app. And then it gave me these 4 folders called Drop Here to Convert, Failed, Finished, In Progress. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to take your PDF and drag it and drop it right into that Drop Here to Convert folder. Unfortunately, I cannot share my desktop with you because of some privacy restrictions. However, what I am doing right now is I am selecting a PDF that is crooked. And I'm dragging it and dropping it right into this folder right now so that you can see what that experience looks like. So I have my PDF that was scanned from clearly a print book, dropped it in my Drop Here to Convert folder. And since I did this earlier, I'm just going to go ahead and jump to where it ends up if it's successful. So once I go to Drop Here to Convert, it should end up in the finished folder. And it did. So we're going to double click to open that folder and check it out. There it is, Adaptive Leadership. Now, what I would do is I would right click it and then say open with, and if you've installed the TextHelp PDF Reader and Read and Write, you will get the option of opening with Read and Write for Google Chrome. You are going to click on that. Once you click on that, it will open up a window that looks very similar to what Scott's been showing you with the PDF, but now it's accessible. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. All right, let's do that. Just a little bit of things. There we go. Hopefully that's helpful. Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, hopefully you can see that a bit better. Now that we're in here, we have our text and we have our toolbar for Read and Write, and we can start highlighting it and having it read back to us. You just push the play button.
Orchestrating conflict is a discipline. It requires eating. 150 mobilize the system for their students in the current reality of own ideas for the.
So a couple things about this. Now, SnapBurner has allowed inaccessible text to become accessible, but it also may come with some kinks like this where it just jumped to a completely different page that had nothing to do with this. And that's partially because I highlighted it by accident. So we do want to be careful about what that's going to look like. So I probably just want to start with one word and then have a playback, and then it should continue. All right, so it's just going to do that one word. So you really want to be careful about what you highlight, but you should still be able to use all these other features that Scott's been talking about, where you can add your annotations and the like. So all of those can make it available for you to actually interact with various text. We can also look at it as maybe we're scanning images of children's books, then you can then make accessible here. So just think about anything that you might scan, come in here to make it accessible. That's how I would use SnapBurner if I were you. You do get a limited amount of scans because this is unfortunately not a tool that's free to just use all the time. I believe you start with 10 free scans and then it's 1 free scan per week. So I don't know how much text you're dealing with is inaccessible, so keep that in mind. So that's a little bit about how we can utilize things that are essentially print-based media or websites or homework assignments. But a couple of things I want to bring to mind. You know, I am a longtime user of closed captioning and subtitles, and this has actually been a really powerful way for me to read. So if you are actually going to be producing videos of any sort or running presentations, we do highly recommend that you consider the use of captions. Now, it's really important that if you're going to be using captions, that they are spelled correctly and they are grammatically correct, because the worst thing you can do is to have captions there that are inaccurate. So a little bit about how you can do that with some of the existing tools. I'm just going to demonstrate one in particular, and that is Google Slides captioning. Now, I'm not doing this during our recorded sessions, and the reason is because of accuracy, because I want the captions to be perfect. But I can do it during presentations that I might be not recording, that are just more for like you and me and a small closed group. So if you are in Google Slides like we're in right now, you can go into present mode, and that will allow you to enable live captioning. It's pretty accurate, but again, it's machine generated, it's not made by humans, so there are going to be some inaccuracies. So we're going to go down and we're going to click on the CC button for captions, and then it should generate them on the bottom of the screen. You can see them as I'm speaking. However, it may not always be accurate if I'm talking super, super fast and then you don't really know what I'm saying. It also might not be accurate when I'm saying my name. For example, my name is Rhiannon. That's actually not spelled correctly. So if I also say my last name, which I'm not, I guarantee you it's going to come out with a completely different word. So these are really, really good for live real-time stuff, but not for if you're trying to edit it and make it accurate down the line. So this is one way you can utilize captions. Another way that you can utilize captions, I'm just going to get out of the present mode, is to go into YouTube. So for example, if you want to create videos and publish them somewhere, then you can go in and you can make edits to the captions, because it will generate a transcript for you in most YouTube videos, and then you can go in and fix it so that it's accurate. I especially recommend this if you are going to be making videos that are under 10 minutes long. So hopefully you are going to be doing that. I also have a guide for you to do it yourself with captions. Additionally, there is a webinar that I ran called Lights, Camera, Screencast, where I do talk about a process that I use to caption my own videos. So here it is, the DIY captioning guide, posted in the chat. And it'll take some time to just look through it and figure out which process you want to use. I'm also available to talk to you if you would like a consultation and figuring out how you can determine a workflow to make your videos accessible. So overall, when we are considering any of these tools, it's so important that we keep in mind that, this reading experience is personal. We have our own preferences, we have our own strategies that we come up with, and we can certainly share those with other people. So whenever you see someone who might be struggling with reading in some sort, just think about some of the different tools that you can recommend to make it easy for them to navigate on the web and participate with peers, or to be able to complete some homework assignments. But really, what you're doing is not only giving them tools for school, but you're giving them tools for life. I would say that's a lot about what Scott and I do, is that we want to provide people with tools and strategies to be able to make things work for them so that you can participate in society. That is it for us in terms of our content. If you are interested in obtaining the slides and the recording of this webinar, please fill out our form here. I'm going to post it once again in the chat. We will also be hosting a webinar tomorrow on tools for executive functioning. So this is thinking about tools for organization, tools for goal setting, and make sure that you register for that if you're interested in that as well. So the form for sign-in is right here in the chat. All right. That is it for us. Thank you so much for joining. We'll be sticking around for a couple of minutes if there's any more questions. Thank you.